the 10th Sumerian tablet, the Anunnaki built the pyramids. So I guess the Anunnaki are the Atlanteans. And from what we learned from the Emerald tablets written by Thoth the Atlantean, and you'll find the playlist with all of them read there by me for you, they had tremendous advanced technology. They even had interstellar travel and interdimensional travel. Now, this is on Humans Are Free, very long, but I'll try and split this into a couple of videos. The introduction, most of the constant readers know a lot about the arrival of the Anunnaki, those who from heavens to earth came. And if you'd like to see more of that, the video before this one, the family tree of the Anunnaki, those who came down from the heavens, they will give you a nice introduction as well. They came to our planet, but for the following piece of history to make sense to the newcomers, we'll outline the main events leading to their so-called colonization of Earth. Let's remember also keep in mind that the Sumerian king lists shows us they had tremendous longevity. They would reign for tens of thousands of years. This was before the deluge of the Great Flood. And then something seems to have happened to change the Earth's climate. And remember, we never had rainbows before the Great Flood of Noah. And that happened after the flood. Also, the longevity of humans was shortened. Now, if we're familiar with the story, we can, we'll go to the Great Flood. According to the Anunnaki themselves, our solar system has one more member, a huge planet that is orbiting the sun in a 3,600-year-long ellipse, and that they called this planet Nibiru, which means the planet of the crossing. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. And you see the plaque here with the symbol of the planets there on the 7 o'clock position. This is held by Zachariah Sitchin. So the planet of the crossing, because together with its moons they form a cross image, and Nibiru is located at the crossing. Because the planet has such a long orbit around the sun, the Nibiruans relied on its very thick upper atmosphere to shelter them from the cold, like a warm blanket. It also had the task of keeping the oxygen from escaping in the outer space, hence making life as we know it possible. But unfortunately for them, they were faced with extinction when the volcanoes, the atmosphere forebears, less belching were spitting up, and Nibiru's air has been made. They said the protective shield has been diminished. They said pestilences of field made apparent, and toil could them not overcome. And this is from what we know from circuit to circuit, Nibiru's atmosphere, more breaching suffered. In the councils of the learned, cures were avidly debated. Ways to bandage the wound were urgently considered. Long story short, they've tried everything from creating an artificial shield, which eventually fell down to the ground, to bombarding the volcanoes with nuclear-like weapons in order to make them active once again, but all their efforts ended in failure. Nibiru scientists had one final suggestion to heal Nibiru's atmosphere: to pulverize very fine subatomic gold dust into the breach. Because it was so fine, the nanoatomic gold dust would remain suspended and in time completely repair the breach. But gold was extremely scarce on Nibiru, though within the hammered bracelet inside the asteroid belt, it was abundant, they said. So rains were withheld, winds blew harder, springs from the depths did not rise. Nibiruans grew restless and stopped worshipping Alalu for not being able to bring them salvation. Anu seized the opportunity and dethroned Alalu from Nibiru's kingship. And fearing death, this is all what the legend says, Alalu boarded a missile-throwing celestial chariot and set its course for Earth, where he discovered gold. He delivered the good news back to Nibiru and requested the throne back, but instead Anu promised him Earth leadership. Anu and his 2 sons, Ea and Enlil, arrived on Earth to make plans for the future. He decided to give Earth's leadership to his son Ea, Ea, and renamed him Enki, Earth's master. Alalu was greatly offended and challenged Anu to battle, but lost again. Alalu was sentenced to die in exile alone on a foreign planet, and we'll continue that story in the final chapter, making interesting connections. Now, again, this is very, very parallel to what Thoth the Atlantean tells us in the Emerald Tablets. He says that one of the Atlanteans was exiled to Mars and with his generals, and at that time Mars was habitable, and this top general was the exiled one, was buried under a face on Mars near a plateau of pyramids. And his generals were later buried around there with him. And the reason they made this face so big was that so that people passing around Mars would be able to know where the exiled general, the Atlantean, was buried. And supposedly he's buried under the face of Mars. Now, this is again parallel and with what Alalu, sentenced to die in exile on a foreign planet, shows us. Now, another very important aspect is the enormous lifespan of the Anunnaki and the Atlanteans, who lived for hundreds of thousands of years, and they reigned for 30, 40, 60 years, 60,000 years, and you'll see that in the Sumerian king list. I have a link for you in the previous video. This means that many of the Anunnaki mentioned in this article here could be still alive today. And there are those anthropologists and archaeologists that believe that some of these UFOs that we see, these hyper frequency hypersonic UFOs, could be the remnants of their spacecraft, and that they're behind that. You know, that's them appearing to us, and that they've been hiding. They're trying to hide from us anyway. Now, concerning the Great Flood, according to the 10th tablet, the so-called lost Sumerian tablet written in Enki's own words, the Anunnaki built the pyramids of Egypt, which is, of course, what Thoth the Atlantean says. He says that he should be credited with building the Giza Pyramid Plateau. He even says that he has a spaceship buried under a sphinx in a pyramid plateau in Egypt. Now, we don't know if it's the sphinx of, they say there are two sphinxes, there should be two sphinxes there, but we don't know if it's a Giza Pyramid Plateau or another, like Saqqara or somewhere else, because a lot of these sand dunes could be hiding more plateaus, more pyramid plateaus. Now, that's according to Thoth the Atlantean, who said that they were, of course, extraterrestrial. Now, the Anunnaki, they said, built the pyramids as beacons for their new main spaceport on Earth after the old ones had been wiped out by the biblical Great Flood. And in the Sumerian tablets, it's known as the Deluge. It was activated by Nibiru's passing, but not solely caused by it. And this is how the events unfolded. Long before Nibiru reaches perigee, close to Earth that is, other significant changes were already taking place. Black spots appeared on the sun's surface. Earth's magnetic field became weaker. The temperatures rised and the ice caps began melting. Now, we already know that we have our magnetic field becoming weak. Now, all these events are similar to what we're experiencing today, including the recent sun's black spots. Now, the tablet does not explain what caused these important galactic changes, but present the concern of Nibiru scientists. They understood that Nibiru's passing will cause huge tidal waves, which will cover most of the lowlands, and that's exactly what happened. Quote, "For days before the day of the deluge, the earth was rumbling, groan as with pain it did. For nights before the calamity struck, in the heavens Nibiru as a glowing star was seen," end quote. This means that Nibiru was not necessarily seen as a huge object in the night sky, otherwise it would have been mentioned as such. Half the size of, or as big as, or bigger than the moon, for example. This may imply that Nibiru's passing could go unnoticed by most people. Nibiru usually passes without causing harm. The Sumerian tablets describe a period of about 500,000 years, or about 138 completed orbits, and there is only one reference to disaster caused by Nibiru, the so-called Deluge, the Great Flood. And just before the Deluge started, most of the Anunnaki returned to Nibiru, but some of them decided to stay. Those who remained watched the destruction from their celestial boats, their craft. They were not ships, they were actually spacecrafts, while circling the earth. Quote, "Then there was darkness in daytime, and at night the moon as though by a monster was swallowed. The earth began to shake by a net force, that is, gravitation or electromagnetic force. Before unknown, it was agitated. In the glow of dawn, a black cloud arose from the horizon. The morning's light to darkness changed. Then the sound of a rolling thunder boomed. Lightnings in the sky lit up, and on that day, on the unforgettable day, the deluge with a roar begun." End quote. Again, this is all from the 10th Sumerian tablet. Next, the South Pole, huge ice sheets smashed into each other, broke and fell into the ocean, creating a gigantic tsunami. The waves traveled north towards the lands of the Abzu, which was an Anunnaki gold mining domain in Southeast Africa. Actually, the oldest discovered metropolis on Earth is located in the Southeast African continent. It's dated about 160,000 to 2000 BC. The metropolis measures an astounding 1,500 square miles and is thought to be part of a 10,000 square miles community, and it was built around thousands of gold mines. Now, the tidal wave continued north until it reached and submerged the city of Edin, meaning the home of the righteous ones. It was one of the first Anunnaki settlements on Earth. It's also the biblical Eden, Eden, and it's located somewhere at the bottom of today's Persian Gulf, and all the inhabited lands of the Anunnaki, together with their gold mines, spaceports, and cities. Some of the very few humans who escaped the flood were Ziusudra, biblically Noah, and his family, who had been secretly instructed by Enki to build a boat, seal it with bitumen in order to make it waterproof, even if submerged by the waves. The great storm with heavy rain started. The tidal wave kept sweeping the earth for 7 days until it finally came to a halt, but the heavy rains continued for 40 more days and nights. When the rains finally stopped, Ziusudra and Ninagal directed the boat towards Mount Ararat, today the Ararat Mountains located in Turkey. Twin peaks were still visible. They were able to find dry land while heading for the peaks. Now, the event took place in the 120th Shar, that's the year 432,000 since the Anunnaki arrived on Earth. But there were other humans who survived the Great Flood, not only Ziusudra and his family. Another group of survivors had been found by the Anunnaki in the Americas, and they were the direct descendants of the Cain, the biblical Cain, who was judged and banished from Eden, the biblical Garden of Eden, after killing his brother Abiel, the biblical Abel, in the dispute. The construction of a new Mission Control Center, MCC. After the deluge, the reconstruction began with a new spaceport. The text describes how the Anunnaki made their buildings according to the position of the stars. Let the heart of the plane the heavens reflect, so did Enlil to Enki suggest. Once Enki to this agreed, Enlil from the skies of distances took measures. Indeed, the pyramids and monuments of Egypt are aligned to the stars. The Hidden Record website Wayne Herschel contends that all 50 pyramids in Lower Egypt replicate the prime stars on one side of the Milky Way, and he also confirms Robert Duval's theory that the 3 main pyramids of Giza conclusively represent Orion. However, he identifies the new scale interpretation very different to that of Duval's. If one were to look for clues as to why the ancient Egyptians only represented one side of the Milky Way in their pyramid star map, what becomes evident is that all stars, except for one, are not sun-like. Also, it hardly seems coincident that all except for one monument do not display the distinctive pyramid shape. It is the obelisk-shaped sun temple of Ra, near Abu Sir that exhibits this very unique scenario. It turns out that the pyramids Abu Sir represent the Pleiades, and that this nearby sun monument may explain the reason for the entire star map. Next, Enlil chose a spot for a new mission control center. The suitable mount he selected, the Mount of Way showing, that is hence most probably the famous Temple Mount of Jerusalem, he named it, a platform of stones akin but smaller than the landing place, hence called the Temple of Jupiter from Baalbek, Lebanon, where Enlil's abode was also located to be built there. This is what he ordered. Before proceeding, we have to share some mind-blowing facts regarding the Baalbek site. According to fully qualified and practicing American civil engineers, the Baalbek Terrace is an amazing achievement because of the size and weight of the stones involved in its construction. The platform and large courtyard is still retained by 3 walls containing 27 limestone blocks, which have no equal size anywhere in the world, as each of them weighs in excess of 300 metric tons. 3 of the blocks, however, weigh around 1,000 tons each. This block trio is world-renowned as a trilithon, considered also the even larger monolith lying in a quarry over a half-mile away from the main Acropolis, and it measures about 70 by 16 by 13 feet, weighs an estimated 1,200 tons. The new landing corridor for the ships coming from the outer space was also needed. A landing path on the twin peaks of Ararat in the north were anchored to demarcate the landing corridor, and 2 other sets of 2 twin peaks required to delimit the landing corridor's boundary, ascent and descent to secure. Where the second set of twin peaks was required, there were none, only a flat land above the water-clogged valley. From the ground protruded artificial peaks. Thereon we can rise. So did Ningishzida, to the leaders say. Ningishzida is the son of Enki. He was a master of genetics and other sciences, and later in ancient Egypt he was known as Thoth. So there we go, Thoth the Atlantean was an Anunnaki. This is the reason why I warned you to be cautious about the so-called emerald tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. It's just another Anunnaki deception, he says there. The construction of the artificial mounds, that is the Great Pyramids of Egypt. On a tablet, the image of smooth-sided, skyward rising peaks for them he drew. He says, if it can be done, let it be so. And Lil will approve, with approval said, let them also be beacon serve. The following passage is very important, though it may be overlooked if careless. Quote, on the flat land above the river's valley, Ningishzida, a scale model built. The rising angles and 4 smooth sides with it he perfected. Next to it, a larger peak he placed. Its sides to earth's 4 corners he set. By the Anunnaki, with their tools of power, were its stones cut and erected. Beside it, in a precise location, the peak that was its twin he placed. If you read the suggested article, then you understand how important is the description of how Ningishzida aligned the Great Pyramid to Earth's 4 corners. This is the excerpt from the article. The geological orientation of the Great Pyramid is probably the most amazing characteristics. Its sides are almost perfectly placed from north, south, east, west. It's almost perfectly oriented on Earth's true north. The true north is calculated on a map by using the longitudinal lines, and it's not the same as the magnetic north, indicated by the compass. Now, erecting the pyramids was probably a small effort to them, and as a result, we have already discovered thousands all over the planet. The Great Pyramid was built to have galleries and chambers for pulsating crystals. And as mentioned, we have a lot to learn about crystals and how they were using them for multiple different purposes. Now, when its artful peak to the heavens rose, to place upon it the capstone, the leaders were invited. Of Electrum, an admixture by Gibil, another son of Enki in charge of metallurgy and maker of magical artifacts, fashioned was the apex stone made. The sunlight to the horizon it reflected, by night like a pillar of fire it was, the power of all the crystals to the heavens in a beam it focused. End quote. According to different accounts, the pyramids had been discovered in white limestone. They were covered in white limestone, and we can only imagine how beautiful they were gleaming in the desert sunlight. Marcus Antonius, a Roman politician and general, described the Great Pyramid more than 2,000 years ago as, quote, shining like a precious jewel, end quote, while being visible from 100 miles away. The description of the apex stone's role at night can be accepted both literally and figuratively, and personally I think both descriptions are accurate. Literally, the capstone was somehow able to emanate the light of the pulsating crystals from inside the pyramid towards the heavens, and figuratively it was also used like a GPS-like landmark by the Anunnaki's spaceships. Further, the Sumerian tablets describe the interior of the Great Pyramids. When the artful works by Ningishzida designed were completed and ready, the Anunnaki leaders of Great Twin Peak entered. At what they saw, they marveled. Then Enlil, by his own hand, the Nibiru crystals activated. Inside, eerie lights began to flicker. An enchanting hum, the stillness broke. Outside, the capstone all at once was shining, brighter than the sun it was, end quote. Now, we've confirmed that the capstone was not reflecting the sun's light, but it was in fact emitting an even brighter light once the device was activated. Now, the construction of the Egyptian Sphinx. While the Anunnaki were still celebrating the construction of the artificial mounds, the pyramids that is, Enki offered a suggestion to his brother Enlil. Quote, when in the future days it will be asked, when and by whom was this marvel fashioned, let us beside the Twin Peaks monument create, the Twin Peaks being the pyramids, an age of the lion let it announce. The image of Ningishzida, later known as Thoth, the peak's designer, let its face be. Let it precisely towards the place of the celestial chariots gaze, when by whom and the purpose let it to future generations reveal, end quote. Enlil agreed with Enki's suggestion and decreed, let the gazing lion precisely eastward face with Ningishzida's image be. Marduk, Enki's firstborn child and his legal heir, was enraged of his father and uncle's decision. He demanded for his image to be carved on the lion's face because the pyramids were situated on his domains. This stirred the other Anunnaki to ask for more domains and human slaves, and the ceremony was about to degenerate. Ninmah, the half-sister of Enki and Enlil, intervened, proposing a fair spread of lands and human slaves among the ruling Anunnaki. The proposal calmed everyone down for the moment, but eventually led to many infamous wars, this time acknowledged by our history. Marduk received the lands known today as ancient Egypt, where he was later worshipped as Ra. Now the summary of events that followed. The next chapters are long and not strongly related to the main subject, but let's make a short summary. Marduk, Ra, replaces Ningishzida, Thoth's face from the lion monument. Marduk lost the first war of the pyramids, aka the Great War of the Anunnaki, and went into exile. He became known to the Egyptians as Amun-Ra, meaning the exiled god Ra. Enki and Enlil divided earth among their other sons. Ninurta, or Enlil's foremost son, mothered by Enlil's half-sister Ninmah, he was Enlil's legal successor, was celebrated as victor after defeating Marduk. Ninurta later established alternative space facilities in the Americas. We can read America's name derived from Peruvian Amaruca, solid evidence. America, Amaruca. Now Anu, Nibiru's king for the past 500,000 years, decided to come to Earth one more time accompanied by his spouse Antu. The Anunnaki debated many plans for the future, including how to keep mankind obedient. And to celebrate Anu's second coming to Earth, a new year count was established by the Anunnaki. Pardoned by his grandfather Anu, Marduk remained rebellious and later usurped a site, planning to build an illicit launch tower. Frustrated by the Enlilites, he also seized the second region. Ningishazida, who was known in Egypt as Thoth the Atlantean, Emerald Tablets, was deposed by his brother Marduk. He took with him followers and flew to the Americas. Marduk declared himself Ra, the sun god, and replaced the moon lunar calendar used by the other Anunnaki with a new one based on the sun's movements. He also started a new religion in which he was worshipped as a god and the sole ruler of Earth, which greatly worried and upset the other Anunnaki. He is the one who introduced the pharaonic reign with the intention to mark the beginning of a new civilization. For the first time, demigods, half Anunnaki and half human hybrids, ruled as kings on Earth. They also served as priests in palaces and temples. They're known today as monarchs and rule mankind. Now, Enki was known as Ptah in Egypt, which means the developer, and commemorated his greatness in reestablishing the civilization after the Great Flood, the Deluge. The Anunnaki were known as Neteru in Egypt, literally meaning the guardian watchers. Marduk proclaimed the coming age of the Ram as his sign and demanded Earth leadership, and Ningishida started building stone observatories to prove otherwise. This is clearly one reason for some of the dozens of monolithic stone observatories erected all over the planet in all major cultures. Marduk built Bab-Ili, Babylon, in Mesopotamia, literally meaning the gateway of the gods. Armies raised by his son Nabu attempted to seize the Anunnaki spaceport. Overruling Enki, the Anunnaki decided to use weapons of terror similar to today's nuclear weapons. Ninurta and Nergal obliterated the spaceport and the sinning cities with nuclear weapons. The drifting nuclear cloud brought death to all in Sumer. Bab-Ili was among the few places to survive the calamity, so Enki saw it as an omen of Marduk's inevitable supremacy. Finally, Enlil accepted Marduk's supremacy and retreated to the faraway lands. Apparently, this was not strongly connected to the main subject, but the intent was to show you that important Anunnaki figures went to the Americas, where they built new space facilities, and of course, including pyramid plateaus as well. It's important evidence that the great Mesoamerican and South American civilizations, Olmec, Toltec, Maya, Aztec, Inca, etc., had also been established by the Anunnaki. Important historical accounts were the same as those of the Sumerians, the creation story, accounts of flying gods which arrived on Earth from the stars, the story of gods revealing great knowledge to the humans, the practice of human and animal sacrifice in the name of their gods, demigods serving as kings and priests, worshipping rituals surrounding knowledge of stars and passing of time. But one of the most amazing connections is Ningishida's name in the Americas. According to the Sumerians, he was known as, get ready for this, the winged serpent. Does this ring a bell to you? All major Mesoamerican civilization worshipped the same god. The Incas called him Viracocha, the Aztecs Quetzalcoatl, the Quiche, the Maya Kumats, and the Toltec Mayas Kukulkan. His name means the same thing, the feathered serpent, which means that he possessed the ability to fly. Now, the flying vehicles of the Anunnaki, they had flying crafts. Quote, I looked up and lo and behold, a whirlwind came out of the south. There was a reddish brilliance about it and it made no sound. And as it reached the ground, 4 strange feet spread out from its belly and the brilliance disappeared. And I threw myself on the ground and prostrated myself, for I knew that it was a divine vision. The whirlwind lifted itself as a fiery chariot and was gone. It carried me swiftly between the earth and the heavens as the eagle soars, and I could see the land and the waters and the plains and the mountains. End quote. The Anunnaki used the so-called whirlwinds for flight inside Earth's atmosphere. The so-called celestial boats were bigger flying crafts that could host numerous whirlwinds. The celestial boats were also used for space travel, similar to the concept of a mothership. Now, finally, the third flying craft model of the Anunnaki were similar to the concept of a rocket and were used to send the refined gold from Earth to the Anunnaki bases on Mars. Martian bases of the Anunnaki, During NASA's Viking mission of 1976, the orbiters Viking 1 and 2 took aerial photographs of Mars' surface in an area that is now referred to as the Cydonia complex of Mars. The orbiters took very controversial pictures consisting of a large detailed humanoid face, the size of a small mountain, and several pyramidal structures in the area. NASA, of course, rushed to deny the possibility of anything else than a natural rock formation, stating that the resemblance to a humanoid face is nothing more than an optical illusion. The second released picture of a vaster area, more controversial because there was also a pyramidal complex visible and what appeared to be the ruins of an ancient city. Even in black and white color, to the untrained eye, the resemblance to the pyramid seen from above and a humanoid face are striking. The Anunnaki built the permanent bases on Mars. After sentencing Alalu to die alone in exile, Anu continued, "Neither on Earth nor on Nibiru shall the exiling be. On the way there is Lachmu, Mars planet, with waters and an atmosphere endowed. Its net force gravitational pull is less than that on Earth, forceful, an advantage in wisdom to be considered. On my departing from Earth, he with me shall make the journey around the planet of Lamu, Mars that is. We shall make circuits to Alalu, a sky chamber we shall provide to the planet Lamu, that is Mars. In it he will be descended. Alone on a strange planet in exile he shall be, his days to his last day by himself to count." End quote. Anzu was the designated spacecraft pilot for Anu on his way back to Nibiru. He decided to make his name and stay with Alalu on Mars until his death. So, this is amazing. Anu's daughter then, Ninma, who was a medical officer, was sent to Earth. On the way, she landed on Mars, where Anzu told her of Alalu's death. He found a cave inside a big mountain-like rock and buried the former king of Nibiru there. Alalu ruled his home planet for 9 shars, as is 32,400 Earth years. Quote, "For the first time in our annals, a king did not on Nibiru died. Not on Nibiru was he buried. So did Ninma say, let him in peace for eternity rest." End quote. And now, this is the most interesting part. The image of Alalu upon a great rock mountain, with beams they carved. They showed him wearing an eagle's helmet, astronaut's helmet. His face they made uncovered. Let the image of Alalu forever gaze towards Nibiru that he ruled, towards the earth, whose gold he discovered. So Ninma, in the name of her father Anu, did declare, end quote. "Anzu, to you, Anu the king, his promise shall be keeping. 20 heroes with you here shall remain, the way stations building to begin. Rocket ships from Earth, the golden ores shall here deliver. Celestial chariots from here, the gold to Nibiru shall then transport. Hundreds of heroes there abode on Lamshu, that is on Mars, shall you make, Anzu shall be their commander. Thus did Ninma, in the name of her father Anu, to Anzu say," end quote. So this is how the construction of the permanent bases on Mars started. 600 Anunnaki came to Earth in the beginning, while 300 more went to Mars. The second ones were called the Igigi, and for the next approximately 500,000 years, the Anunnaki sent refined gold from Earth to Nibiru via the Martian base. And according to the Sumerian tablets, the Igigi left Mars in the time of the Deluge and never returned because Nibiru's gravitational pull made Mars' atmosphere and waters escape into space, hence making Mars planet unsuitable for life. It's amazing. This is by Alexander Light. Humans are free. And please leave your comments and thank you for your support.